Hi, everyone. In today's episode, we're joined by Professor Chell Roberts, founding dean of the Shiley-Marcos School of Engineering at the University of San Diego. With a rich career spanning from his role as executive dean of the College of Technology and Innovation at Arizona State University to leading groundbreaking initiatives in engineering education, Professor Roberts shares his insights into the evolving landscape of higher education and the critical roles that flexibility, real-world problem-solving, and industry partnerships play in shaping the engineers of tomorrow. We dive into the future of international higher education in light of geopolitical changes, international student dynamics, and the exciting prospects for international students from countries like India. Listen on for a stimulating conversation with Professor Chell Roberts. I first want to tell you, thank you so much for being here.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much, Alana.
We're very happy to have you joining us to share some of your insight. I would love to know, and I think our listeners would be very much interested in how you've seen the ebb and flow of international students and specifically Indian students into these programs.
You know, the United States educational system has been deemed to be one of the best in the world. And because of that, it has attracted students from around the world, international students. When I was at Arizona State University, it's a very large university with now well over 100,000 students and thousands of students that are international. So my first experience would have been through the lens of a very big university that attracted many students. Now, for some reason or another, the students that I attracted happened to be students from India. So my early graduate students in my master's and PhD programs all came from India. Well, just about all came from India. Remember the very first one that came to me and was very enthusiastic and said, I'd like to work for you. And I said, his name was Murugan Palaniappan. And I said, well, I don't know. Let's see what you can do. And he demonstrated to me an ethos and characteristic that was amazing to me in terms of his desire to work. And that's what I found in all of the students that I had from India that had a strong desire to transform, to learn. And because they spoke English, it was a little bit easier than some of the other international students for me. And so pretty soon I had a whole bunch of international students, mostly from India, that came, and a number of my colleagues did also. Not that there weren't other students. There were students certainly from China was one of the other big areas in the world, but we had some Latin American students and a number from around the world. All right, so you watch periods of big influx of international students, and then sometimes it ebbs and it flows and it grows. And many times that's political concern by students. Sometimes it's relative to job opportunity. We certainly know that many students and many of the students that graduated with me stayed in the United States. They were looking for job opportunities in the technical fields. So I watched as the industry went up and many were being hired, and I watched as industry came down for a while, and some were concerned because they had a limited practical training period. So sometimes the job market will dictate what happens. Sometimes international policy, and we're certainly approaching a period of change, which I think, by the way, is very good for India. We can elaborate on that, where there's apprehension in going to a new country. Am I safe? What will happen? Can I get a job? Am I going to be safe? Am I going to feel at home? Is there a community with me? So that can ebb and flow also as international students go. So I've seen big influxes and I've seen big downturns in international student markets. And industry, as we know, sometimes it'll be way up and it'll go down, but it goes up, it goes down. It's kind of like the stock market. It goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. And I think over a period of time, the technical areas have all increased over time, as long as the students are resilient enough to change and also be able to adapt to the changes in industry and expectations. And that's some of the ebb and the flow that I've seen.
We all went through the COVID-19 pandemic in our own ways, in our own corners of the world, but we were all in it together in some respect. And of course, universities across the globe were hit quite hard with a new reality with a massive drop in especially international enrollments, with a shift from on ground to online education. At this point in time, here was a situation that no one could actually control, do anything about, work around. This was the state of things. And as I think towards the near future, we are going into a new geopolitical climate. I know you have a lot of expertise in this area, have written a lot on it. And I wonder if there's some bit of control, let's say, that international students can harness in order to continue fulfilling their academic goals, their career goals, despite the possibility of a tighter system of visa regulations, of a cut in OTP programs. What's the possibility there for students to continue, especially from India, on this very strong upward influx? I would love to know some of your thoughts on that.
Well, thank you for the question. I think that the future's complex, of course. We don't really know. I wish I were a prophet and could tell you exactly what was going to happen. I To start, what I think the student strategy um, might be, some of mine in my own life, is flexibility and to keep an eye on the bigger goal, maybe not the smaller goal. You want to get a degree and get a job, might be the goal, but you're also fulfilling something in life, which is changing who you are. That's part of education. Yes, COVID was so fundamentally restructuring of my thoughts and of the university thoughts. We'd actually trained for a pandemic years before, thinking that one might come, and then it came, and it was even then a
Mm-hmm.
surprise. Um, so, from a student standpoint, you're not going to know what's going to happen, and
Really?
so jumping in, and moving toward that goal, keeping an eye on that goal, I think is the best thing you can do. But if change happens, don't let it change who you are and where you're going. Now, from a university standpoint, what are we doing differently? Well, I've set up online programs specifically for Indian students, and I'm working on hybrid programs specifically for Indian students with partner relationships in India, and I expect to in the future have full-time programs inside of India. Now, why does that help? And what are the good and the bad parts of that, I think, from a perspective of a student? Well, if you're not in the United States for at least one full academic year studying to get a degree, you're not going to get practical training. So if we had a COVID situation where you couldn't come, um, by current law, and you wouldn't be able to get practical training. So that's not a great thing, if that's your goal. However, you can fulfill the educational part. And I think there'd be lobbying for some change in policy. Many of our incoming administrative under the new administration are very tied with India and relationships with India. They're trying to ease relationships. So I think this next administration will be very good with India. I've looked at what the Brookings Institute says, the Center for Strategic Analysis, even some of the latest things in the media in India indicate that there are a number of natural born Indian citizens in the Trump administration who are trying to ease relationships. So I'm betting that for the Indian student, the visas will, yeah, it's still hard because the population is growing, but I predict that times will be fairly good. But for India, they're not going to be as good for some other countries, but they're going to be good for India. And certainly in
Mm-hmm.
California, where I am, it's a very welcoming, diverse place for Indian students. So the first thing is what might happen, and we don't know, but I think looking through the crystal ball, it looks positive. I think if you can't get a visa for a student, I think having options on ground to start are not bad. So we could start a student that couldn't get a visa and get them
Mm-hmm.
through a semester or more and still give them the opportunity to come to the US. And by the way, that lowers the cost because now you've taken a lower cost program and you finally
That's
get to go
right.
to the US. Now, the time factor does make a difference. So, what is it that you do in the U.S. that helps you get that job? My belief is that about 90% of all students are looking for a job, and typically that's a job in industry and not waiting to become a professor, because those ranks are very thin. So you can stay around, get a PhD, and hope you become a professor. But less than 15% of all PhDs ever make it to become a professor. So that's a very tricky, hard path to navigate. So
Yes.
what we are doing is we've designed our master's programs to be professional, to speak to industry. So all of our programs were designed by industry. We had Apple, we've had Netflix, we've had Google that sit on the boards that design our programs. And so they're a little bit different than a theoretical research program. Yes, there's research involved, but the type of research that scaffolds and lends itself to an industrial based job. We also work with them to have real projects that you're working with industry on while you're a student. So they fund the projects, they help fund what we're doing. They sit and look at the projects, and I think that gives a opportunity for students to get to know industry and industry to know them while they're in the program, not waiting till you're after the program. Um, in San Diego, we have a great, as in California, great network of entrepreneurs, of new startups, of new business. Part of our strategy is also to have industry providing students with entrepreneurial opportunities while they're students, so they can now interface in another way. So they're starting something through their program with industry as a collaborator. In the past, what we did with COVID, we did allow students to stay there even if they were learning more remotely and not with face to face with an instructor, with either masks, or they would be in separate locations, but they'd still be working with us in the U.S., so they could stay there. We were very careful with our dorms. We had to have more separation. Um, so another strategy is to make sure that all students have we can control the housing and the food for every student, so that that's all taken care of and they don't have to worry about the transportation, everything in society. So we're trying to bundle all of our services so that a student can, if they desire, have a location where they wouldn't have to leave if there were problems. And it's a safety issue. Now, that doesn't mean that they have to. They certainly are welcome to go live with family or somewhere else and come in. But when you have turmoil and problems, it's nice to have that safety net and that ability to rely on hybrid, different sorts of programs and different sorts of engagement. Even industry engagement is possible during a COVID period using this sort of model. Let me start with motivation of industry and to understand why industry would care about this. We know to hire and maintain a high tech worker, a high tech skilled employee. And let's say it's a master's degree student in artificial intelligence, for example, or cybersecurity programs that I have. All right, so yeah, the degree itself, the knowledge itself, sound pretty good, but why? What motivates industry? Well, turnaround, losing an employee is expensive. It's estimated that it costs $250,000 for industry to find one high skilled worker that's going to stay with the company long term and contribute. And it takes a period of time, sometimes up to 2 years, for a new employee to be able to rapidly work hands on and be able to do something. And that's partly an issue with the educational system. Education tends to be more theoretical than applied, and so there's this turnaround where industry tells me we have to retrain them. Not that they're not really smart, but they have to be able to do and not just think. And they need practice doing, working on teams, designing, developing, creating. All right. So given a couple facts here, the motivation of industry by trying to find those people that's expensive to do, and because of turnaround time and training and keeping somebody they know can work in this environment, those are two big factors that I think really played into the design of the program. All right. So my approach to industry, by the way, I charge industry something for projects, but I'm able to legally give all intellectual property back to the company. That was a big deal breaker for industry. So I have students working on real projects for industry that are led by industry. Now, I don't charge industry anything like $250,000 like it's going to cost them. We charge a lot less, enough that they're motivated to work with the student team. So now here's the buy for industry. You're going to mentor a team on a project that you think is important, that you care about, and we're going to provide the technical hands-on doing of the project. You're going to be the project supervisor in terms of watching them and telling them what to do. Now we're going to let you also watch some of the other teams. So now they get to access their team and some other teams. And what do they see? They see who the students are that really are learning to engage in a hands-on way and to be able to do, and not just book smart theoretical students. So when I first started this, by the way, my first year of doing this, I had like 4 companies say we'll do this. Only 4 companies. And this was at Arizona State University where I did it before I went to USD. And that soon blossomed into 10, 20, 30, 40 companies from very far around because they saw the success sort of program. All right, so I brought that to USD also with that background knowledge that most students, I believe, not every student, wants to be employed and they need an experience hands-on to demonstrate to employers. And employers want to hire somebody, but they're going to be, they're going to have to sponsor um, H-1B and green card, and they don't want to lose somebody after a year. They want somebody that can do. They got to train for a while, so they got to be sure the student's not just smart,
That's right.
but the student can do. And we try to scaffold those programs. Not perfectly. Every student, it's up to the student a little bit to also engage with us and industry and the program and do these projects and become fulfilled in what they're doing. So this is the sort of thing we do at USD to help our students with at least the job side training.
A question about these students who are in such a program: is there a certain percentage of them who are hireable post graduation by the specific companies they had been training with or working with during the program?
I don't know the percentage, but I know that almost every company will hire students directly from the teams. It happens across the board. And you end up maybe with half the students that come out with very rapid job offers, but you have some that don't. So a student, every student is different, and they have different motivations. So then what happens to the student that may not get the immediate job offer? They still have a great skill set and portfolio, and so now what you're doing is trying to help them use that portfolio to go to the next place. I forgot to mention one thing that I think is very important in a program like this. Traditional academic faculty are very knowledgeable. Their skill set tends to be more theoretical and in doing research. That's how I was trained, as a research faculty who sat in my research lab and wrote grant proposals. That's a different skill set, though, than necessarily being able to engineer from an industrial standpoint and what industry wants. So it's why I brought in boards, but I also have hired people that have PhDs that work in industry. So I have a set of those that work on these projects and lead these projects. So all my faculty that run these programs, the majority of them have industry experience so that they can work with industry and understand these needs in a very different sense. They have to be incentivized in a different way, and their job performance, what they do is different than a traditional faculty. So it's also important who you hire, how you legally structure it, who you bring in on a board, how you perceive the future, and what's at stake for the student, and how you create that student experience.
Let's say the future of higher education
Uh,
in a new geopolitical climate, right?
your discussion or your comments there made me think a little bit about the future. You talked about the future of higher education. Um, a few things that we don't know. We don't know the jobs of the future exactly. And so students need to be able to learn and able to adapt and able to continue to learn. They're going to have to do that. That's something we think we all care about teaching. We don't know the future, but some things that really stand out to me. One is one of the futures is India. If you look at population growth and the care for education and the center hub of the world, it's India. That's that region. Now it expands, Southeast Asia and Africa, but that whole region of the world is where the future is happening. And so I think strategically, it's not just the US, and yes, we have a great educational system, but my strategy has been to embed myself and our university in India as a hub for the future. Um, Second part is to make sure that when students have to solve problems that are realistic problems, they gain adaptable skills, I think, that go to a next problem and a next problem, because it's not a book answer. It's oh, how do I design the next AI system, artificial intelligence system, that combines with, theater? How do I get robots to actually have compassion? How do I do these things? Well, there's no answer in the back of the book to do that sort of thing. And so when somebody learns
Yeah,
it, they have to go out and they have to learn. And
that's
it's
right.
that learning cycle with realistic problems that starts to get them, I can do this. I can change. I can do things, and I can do it inside of India. I can do it from wherever I am. Future's unknown. I think it's important not just to recruit and take students from a country, but to give back to a country to help build the infrastructure of that country, especially a special and important place like India. Oh, can I add one more thing? Uh, the our approach. We came into India. We came, we came into India wondering how to approach students and how to tell our story about what we're doing. And there are some typical traditional ways that people engage in India. Um, we were very fortunate to find a partner in India that understood how we wanted to be represented, how we wanted to communicate and talk and tell our story. The approach from this partner, Grad Wright, has been very eye opening and very refreshing to me. And I'm really thankful that we have such good partners. But Grad Wright is certainly a leader in what we have been able to do there.
Oh, it's beautiful that you said that, and we appreciate it. And of course, we appreciate this partnership very, very much. And we are thrilled to have you coming on to represent also USD and also yourself, of course. And I think we're going to have some really fantastic interactions with students and great conversations, also with industry leaders and also with universities. So I want to
Great.
thank you so much for joining us today.